welcome to Books of Blood. My name is John, and today, once again, we're going to be talking about Horror Mayhem. Like I said in the previous video that I did for this, we are about 6 weeks away, so I thought what I would do is make videos with recommendations for each of the 4 weeks of Horror Mayhem, which is of course going to start in May, henceforth Horror Mayhem, and it is created by the Bookish Bryants, Scott and Becky, and it has a slew of hosts, including yours truly. I'm trying to think who else is in it. Sean Standfast, I believe his name is. Let me think. Paul Reed's books, Mindy's book journey. Trying to name some that I haven't really named. I think there is one, and I didn't put them in the list originally, an autistic reader. I believe they're also going to be participating, and just a host of others, all right? So, the first week was supernatural and creatures. In other words, you could talk about you could read a book about ghosts, haunted houses. You could read a book, as long as it had something to do with supernatural. Or you can read about creatures, and then they don't have to be supernatural. If you want to read about, or do a book about Bigfoot, that's fine. If you want to do a book about, I don't know, the Jersey Devil, you can do that. And my cat just jumped in my lap. You can do that. You know, creatures are creatures, all right? So, this week, and I will leave a link to that video in the description for today's video, all right? It's self-promotion. It's what it's all about, okay? And if you don't believe me, just ask Bob Vance at Vance Refrigeration. There you go. Anyway, so today, week 2, we're going to be talking about Gothic Horror. Now, I'm going to be honest with you. I don't quite really know what Gothic Horror is. I have a general idea of what Gothic Horror is, and I'm going to present the books to you, and hopefully I got it right. And if I did, hey, let me know. And if I didn't, please politely let me know that also. So what I did was I put these in 2 stacks. The stack of the books before the 20th century and the stack of books written within the 20th century. And yes, I know we're in the 21st century, I understand that, but the books I have here are from one stack or the other, okay? Or from the 19th or 20th century or whatever. So, and like I said before, some of these books are going to bleed over from one genre to another, and that's what's going to happen with a couple of these books here. So, starting off with some old school stuff, pre-20th century, and I talked about this in the last video, but Carmilla. Carmilla, I believe, could definitely be classified as a Gothic horror novel, and this precedes Dracula. In fact, like I said, I think Bram Stoker got a lot of ideas for Dracula from Carmilla. And like I said, I'm going to read a little bit of the synopsis, just the same amount that I did before. In an isolated castle deep in the Austrian forest, Laura leads a solitary life with only her ailing father for company. Until one moonlit night, a horse-drawn carriage crashes into view, carrying an unexpected guest, the beautiful Carmilla. And since this is a vampire novel, you can pretty well guess what Carmilla is. So there's Carmilla. Okay. Alright, so I've got a short story collection here by Daphne du Maurier. And I do believe that in some of her stuff you could actually consider it to be Gothic. Stories like Rebecca, or the novel Rebecca, and I would have included that, but I'm pretty sure it's a pretty big book. And it's over 250 pages. And the Bookish Bryants, Scott and Becky, they want to keep these at under 250 pages, novellas and short stories. All right, so there you go. Anyway, she has a short story collection out called Don't Look Now. And this includes the title story, which is Don't Look Now. And it is also what the movie starring Donald Sutherland and Christy Brinkley, oh my God, Julie Christie is based on. Alright, it's a very good story. Personally, I thought the movie was better. That's personally. But the story is still very good, very well written, as you can expect from Daphne du Maurier. And I kind of think it does fit in with the realms of Gothic fiction or Gothic horror in its own strange way. Also, this has The Birds, which of course Hitchcock's The Birds was based on. I'm trying to see if there's anything else. Yeah. Escort, Split Second, Kiss Me Against Stranger, La Sang Vierge, The Blue Lenses, Indiscretion, and Monteverita. I don't know if those are Gothic, but like I said, I would include Don't Look Now as a Gothic horror short story. Alright? Like I said, if I'm wrong, correct me politely. So there you go. Moving on. Let's go back to the older. This is definitely Gothic horror. Frankenstein. Alright? And if you don't know what Frankenstein is about by now, then you've never picked up a book. Let's just put it that way, especially an older book. But for those of you who might not know what Frankenstein is about a scientist, Victor Frankenstein, or Henry in some cases, who creates a living being from the parts of dead living beings. And he brings it to life. Alright? And the trivia thing about this is people think that Frankenstein is the monster. No, Frankenstein is the scientist. The monster is the monster. But then again, who is the real monster in this book? So there you go. That is Frankenstein. Let me move it closer and quit waving it around. There you go. Alright. And another one I talked about, modern 20th century, The Haunting of Hill House. I believe this is definitely what would definitely be considered Gothic horror, and it's, yeah, anyway. And I got the paperback this time. I had another copy of it yesterday or the other day when I did this previous video for Supernatural and Creatures. Anyway, but anyway, The Haunting of Hill House is basically about these four paranormal investigators who spend the night or spend time in this castle, or not a castle, but a house known as Hill House, to determine if it is haunted. And yeah, it pretty much is. So, and that's, yeah, that is The Haunting of Hill House. Sorry about the very weird description of that, but if you haven't read it, I don't want to give too much away, and if you haven't seen the Netflix series, I highly recommend the Netflix series. Okay. Alright, now I got a short story collection, and this is from the 19th century, or most of these are, I'm pretty sure. Anyway, this is the Classic Gothic Horror Collection. And I love that cover. That cover is just awesome. And there's actually a whole set of books out here that have this whole matching theme to them. The kind of brownish or orangish or tan looking cover. And the same font and everything. Really cool painting on the front. There's the Classic Horror, Classic Gothic Horror, Ghost Stories. There's the Necronomicon. And there's two others, which is science fiction and fantasy, which I actually might get those to complete the set. Anyway, this has stories by Edgar Allan Poe, Mary Shelley. Let me see, some of the stories here are The Dream by Mary Shelley, The Fall of the House of Usher by Edgar Allan Poe, The Invisible Girl by Mary Shelley. There's more than that, more than just Shelley and Poe. The Yellow Wallpaper by Charlotte Perkins Gilman. The Romance of Certain Old Clothes by Henry James. And if I had remembered, I would have included The Turn of the Screw. Because I'm pretty sure that is definitely... And I do have The Turn of the Screw, and I just forgot to bring it out here. But yeah, I would include that also. But yeah, short stories, the Gothic Horror Collection. So, Classic Gothic Horror, excuse me. Alright. Okay, next up, and this is definitely a modern day Gothic horror tale, and this is by Jason Robert Ducharme, and this is Alessias Melody, and it's very short. It's a novella. Having been responsible for the death of his sister 50 years before, the lonesome and grief-stricken Louis Delacroix works as the butler of a mountain estate belonging to a dying steel tycoon. His fragile world falls to pieces upon the arrival of a young girl who possesses a special and familiar talent that threatens to drive Louis over the edge. And that is Alessias Melody. Like I said, kind of a modern day Gothic Horror tale. And I'm going to move on to a couple others here. Michael McDowell. You could pretty well say he's one of the finest writers of Southern Gothic literature out there today. And I took some liberties. I'm going to include the Amulet. Did I move my camera? I did. There we go. I'm going to include the Amulet. I have not read it yet. This is Michael McDowell's, I believe it's his first novel. I have heard so many good things about this book, so I wanted to go ahead and include it. Now, it is a little bit longer than the 250 pages. It's 287 pages, but I definitely want to include this one. And it says, when a rifle range accident leaves Dean Howell disfigured and in a vegetative state, his wife Sarah finds her dreary life in Pinecone, Alabama, made even worse. After long and tedious days on the assembly line, she returns home to care for her corpse-like husband while enduring her loathsome and hateful mother-in-law, Joe. Joe blames the entire town for her son's mishap, and when she gives a strange piece of jewelry to the man she believes responsible, a series of gruesome deaths is set in motion. Sarah thinks the amulet has something to do with the rising body count, but no one will listen to her. As the inexplicable murders continue, Sarah and her friend Becca Blair have no choice but to track down the amulet themselves before it's too late. That's the Amulet, and that's by Michael McDowell. Okay, and continue with Michael McDowell and is Cold Moon Over Babylon. And I believe this one does fall. I got dust on this one. This does fall in the 250 page range. 247 pages. So you're good. Anyway, it is about I believe she's a 14-year-old girl is murdered. She's on her bicycle and somebody literally, I think what they do is they beat her and then they basically tie her to her bicycle and then they just toss the bicycle and her into the river. And you pretty well know who the murderer is pretty kind of early in the book, not too early. And it's basically about the family of the murdered girl wanting revenge. But there's more of a twist to it than that. It's kind of a ghost story. It's a Gothic horror story or Southern Gothic. Like I said, Michael McDowell, that's what he does. So there's that, Cold Moon Over Babylon. Let me hold it up again. Okay. All right. Okay, let's go back to the old days for a little bit. A couple of books here. All right, first up, we've got The Strange Case of Dr. Jekyll and Mr. Hyde. This is definitely Gothic horror, and of course, it's about a scientist who is experimenting with the duality of man. You know, is like inside of each man is there a good person and a bad person, and he takes these chemicals and of course becomes Mr. Hyde. All right, it's pretty straightforward story. Anyway, there is that. There is Dr. Jekyll and Mr. Hyde, or The Strange Case of Dr. Jekyll and Mr. Hyde. And finally, for the pre-20th century, we have got, actually, I'm not sure if this was pre-20th century. It might not have been. When was this book actually written? I'm not sure. I'm not sure when The Picture of Dorian Gray was written. It may have been written in the 20th century instead of the 19th. I may be wrong about that. Anyway, there's The Picture of Dorian Gray, and again, it's one of those that you pretty well heard the story a million times before. This fellow Dorian Gray stays young, but the painting that he had painted gets older and older and uglier and uglier. And if you want to read a modern day update of The Picture of Dorian Gray, there's a story called The Picture of Health by Ray Garton, and I believe the first of the Hot Blood books, and maybe the second one, but it is a modern updated variation on The Picture of Dorian Gray. And it takes place during the heyday whenever AIDS was really prevalent. You had more people dying from AIDS and things. So it's about this rock star, this girl that meets this rock star, and he's got the same kind of painting. And reason being is, and you know what, I'm not going to go into too much detail about it. If you can find it, read it for sure. It's really good. All right, so let's go ahead and close out. And I think I have one book that's kind of mixed in with the wrong thing, but that's all right. The Beguiled by Thomas Cullinan. I think you could definitely include this one as a Southern Gothic. It's about this Civil War soldier, and he's shot and he's injured, and he's found by these girls or these women or whatever that run this all-girls school. And there's a lot of sexual tension, a lot of kind of creepy scenes, and then what they do to the soldier is pretty horrific also. But yeah, I would definitely throw this under the Southern Gothic banner. And this was made into a movie starring Clint Eastwood and the 1970s, directed by Don Siegel, and then it was remade in the 2000s. Can't remember what year it was remade, and that's from the remake, directed by Sofia Coppola, and it starred Nicole Kidman, Kirsten Dunst, Elle Fanning, and Colin Farrell played the soldier in it this time. And I love both versions. I think both versions are very well done. Anyway, but that's that. That's that. All right, and then we have The Bloody Chamber. And this book is almost, I swear it is almost infamous. I mean, there's so many people that love this book and the author and her writing, Angela Carter, and I'm one of them. I read this. I loved it. It's basically her retelling of classic fairy tales, and yes, there is a Gothic element to a lot of these fairy tales. Let me see what are the stories in this. Let me find the heading, or the contents. The Bloody Chamber, The Courtship of Mr. Lion, The Tiger's Bride, Puss in Boots, The Earl King, The Snow Child, The Lady of the House, The Werewolf, The Company of Wolves, and Wolf Alice. Alright? And you know what? It's one of these things where even if the book absolutely sucked, that's just a beautiful cover. I mean, that is just amazing artwork. You know, and then it opens here. You got a key on this side, and then you got what the key unlocks on the inside here. But anyway, that is The Bloody Chamber. And last but not least, you can't really talk about Gothic horror without talking about Edgar Allan Poe. Now, I don't think all of Poe's stories were Gothic. I believe stories like, I think a lot of his poems were. Like Annabel Lee, I believe that was Gothic. The Raven, I believe that would be considered a Gothic poem. Poem. I don't know. The Fall of the House of Usher, I believe that would be considered Gothic. Let me see. What else do we have here? He wrote so much. Berenice, Ligeia. Let me see. See what, I don't know, like the Oblong Box or the Cask of Amontillado. Do you guys think that would be considered Gothic? You know, I'm not sure. Like I said, Gothic is one of those that I don't read very much of, but when I do read it, I like it. You know, so that's what I've got. That's pretty much my collection right here. That's it. So thank you guys for watching once again. Like I said, I'll leave a link to the description for the first video in the description. And thank you. And as always, take care and stay scared. Bye-bye.